Recent reports confirming that the COVID-19 virus probably came from a Chinese lab don't surprise most voters who suspect U.S. officials may have been involved in a cover-up. But first, let's recap some stuff. Once again, we find ourselves going back to careless or misleading criticism of our "It's Okay to Be White" poll. First, despite the attacks, not one media organization has decided to poll the question themselves or to fund someone who will. And then secondly, the media hive mind has unanimously settled on a narrative that our question was sloppily worded. Not one of these, that I've seen at least, has offered a valid alternative to how they think we should have worded it. Now, thankfully, there are a lot of intelligent people subscribed to our channel, and some of them comment in good faith, raising questions and ideas. I got into a discussion with one individual who claimed that the statement itself, and not the concept, is what's racist, and that we should have asked instead just whether it's okay to be white. Since I wanted the results separated by strongly agree, somewhat agree, etc., then we would have to change the question to this. And frankly, in my opinion, this wouldn't have changed the results at all. But again, all of this criticism ignores the fact that despite the sample size, margin of error, or how it's worded, around half the black population agrees that it's okay to be white. All the criticism in the world isn't going to invalidate that. Now, on to the Capitol riot. We've been polling on this topic since the week following the protest at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and public opinion has shifted incredibly since then. The mainstream spin around this event was so effective and so unified that our polling showed that a full half of voters then wanted President Donald Trump removed from office, and nearly half wanted him incarcerated. Less than 6 months later, voters only tepidly supported a congressional investigation into the Capitol riot, though over 40% strongly supported it. Fast forward to the beginning of 2022, on the one-year anniversary, and then most Americans thought that the Jan 6 investigation was a partisan committee weaponized against innocent Americans. We gave the topic of the Capitol riot a bit of a rest during 2022, but at about the 2-year mark, we asked another set of questions, which led to this.
Congressman, thank you so much for coming on. I have never seen members of Congress accuse the other, I mean, there's usually a kind of fraternity in the Congress, you're all members of Congress, 435, accuse their colleagues unfairly, without any evidence at all, of committing felonies. What's your response to this, to the lying from your colleagues in the Congress?
You've exposed so many lies tonight with these tapes that it's changed my perception of what happened 2 years ago, and I was there. The tapes of people milling peacefully about. And my hat's off to your producers for sitting over there and going through hours of this.
Yes,
but I would love to unleash the resourcefulness of the American public on these videos. I think they should be released. You know, I think it's poppycock that they can't be released because of some security issues. Look, I'm the one who's supposed to be secured by these buildings, and I'm not worried about releasing them. They need to be released. In fact, there was a Rasmussen poll that just came out. This showed over 80%, 78% of Democrats and 86% of Republicans say that all the videos should be released. And they should, because as you said, Tucker, you didn't have facial recognition software there. We also we need a complete catalog of all of the feds who were there. Tell us who they were. Let's watch the videos and let's see what they did, because there's some really strange behavior on those videos of people behind the police lines in plain clothes, like touching them on the shoulder, talking in their ear, walking around boundaries as if they weren't even there. It's very odd. I'm the one who asked Merrick Garland. I showed him the tape of Ray Epps. The Democrats didn't like it. I had to show it on an iPad for Merrick Garland to watch it, and then he refused to say how many feds were there. But that was also in the Rasmussen poll. 57% of Democrats think that it's at least somewhat likely that feds, agents of the federal government, were not just there, but were also encouraging people to riot or go into the Capitol.
It's very clear from the footage that our producers bravely slogged through for 3 weeks, and God bless them for doing it, that that's exactly right, that federal agents encouraged the violence that day. We're just a TV show, and we can't show people without proof of who they really were. But I agree with your assessment completely. That obviously happened.
We humbly thank Congressman Thomas Massie, Julie Kelly of American Greatness, and Tucker Carlson for making the American public part of what looks to be one of the biggest government transparency stories ever. But back to our topic du jour, COVID-19. Here's one of the questions. Are you surprised by the news that masks didn't work against COVID-19, or had you already believed this before the recent report? Now, I don't want to turn this into a scientific debate on the validity of the Cochrane report that was recently covered by a New York Times op-ed, so please hold your tongue on that in the comments. The purpose of this question is to provide an anti-mask stimulus and see what kind of response we get. 35% of voters said they were surprised, and 49% say they already believed it. 16% weren't sure how to answer the question. But this is a pretty good indicator that the New York Times is probably behind the power curve on this one. Young people were most surprised, and gender and race weren't much different. But the party signal is where it's at. A majority of Democrats were surprised to hear that a scientific report said masks don't work, but only about a quarter of Republicans and independents. Independents were very not sure, but they tend to be less connected to the news. And this number for Republicans, 65%, a strong majority, still seemed a little low to me. But keep in mind that about 60 to 65% of Republicans also got vaccinated. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, there is one demographic which was most surprised to hear that masks don't work. A stunning 65% of them, and only 16% of them say they already believed it. Voters who strongly approve of Joe Biden. The vast majority of those who strongly disapprove of Biden were already against masks. Now, spurred by a recent DOE report that COVID likely originated from a lab leak in Wuhan, we asked this. Only 20% of voters said they were surprised to hear about a report confirming Wuhan origins, but 2/3 of voters already believed it. Don't you think there's a pretty big gulf here, considering the government and most of the media seemed unilaterally against the idea that the virus originated in Wuhan? This kind of rift can't possibly be good for government trust. Here's the wacky one for me. Younger voters were the standouts, more than 3 times as likely as older voters to be surprised by the Wuhan origins. This is incredible since often on topics like this, their higher use of alternative media gives them a bit of an edge. Democrats were much more likely to be surprised than other political affiliations, but it was still only 30% of them. But again, here's Biden approval. The strongly approves were more likely than any demographic to say they were surprised about the Wuhan origins of COVID, and basically no voters who strongly disapprove of Biden were surprised. And last, Dr. Anthony Fauci, this one's for you. How likely is it that some U.S. officials were involved in a cover-up of China's role in the COVID-19 pandemic? About 2/3 of voters, 65%, say it's likely, including 48%, nearly half who say it's very likely. Only 10% of voters say it's not at all likely. This one's a little bit of a head-scratcher because on this topic, the 18 to 39-year-olds are right there with everyone else. They were even half as likely to think there was no chance that U.S. officials were involved in a cover-up. Democrats weren't that far off, but they said very likely about 20 points less than Republicans. But again, the signal in Biden approval is strongest. Only 30% of voters who strongly approve of Biden think it's very likely that U.S. government officials were involved in a cover-up of COVID's origins. And only 46% said it was at least somewhat likely. But 91% of voters who strongly disapprove of Biden agreed. Normally, the strongly approves are the standout. But it's clear here that it's the Biden strong disapprovers who are driving the signal of government distrust. To me, that's incredible. It looks like the best litmus test for whether you mistrust your government is whether you're willing to admit you strongly disapprove of Biden. Please like the video and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, and thanks for watching.